Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Time Traveler's Handbook. Today we are going to be talking about Doctor Who Season 6's Christmas special, titled A Christmas Carol. Spoilers ahead. In this episode, the Doctor attempts to save a space liner full of passengers from the evil doings of a man named Kazran Sardik by going back in time and influencing Kazran to be a better man at present. The Christmas Carol is naturally a very interesting Christmas story to me because it involves time travel and very few Christmas stories do. It's not the only one, of course, but it is the most prominent one, and there's quite a lot to learn about how you can use time travel to invoke an emotional response out of someone and change them for the better. There are obviously some differences between this episode and the classic Christmas tale to give it more of a sci-fi spin, but the emotional responses are essentially the same, and so talking about this here is basically covering all my thoughts about the classic Christmas tale as well. First, the Doctor goes to Kazran's past, where he causes Kazran to fall in love with a cryogenically frozen woman named Abigail. This story rings the same bells as the classic tale, where Kazran fell in love with the woman, but eventually they had to part ways and he was left feeling bitter about it. In this case, however, Abigail didn't leave Kazran, but rather has an incurable illness and only has 1 day left to live. So they make the decision to leave her in cryosleep indefinitely. This softens Kazran's heart a little bit, but not enough so we can see that from the perspective of what's possible in this universe, once again, we can see that going back in time and influencing someone does have an effect on their future, which is why this whole plot works at all. I do want to quickly mention that cryosleep is a really interesting topic to me. It's essentially time travel, but only one direction and there's no going back. This episode doesn't feel like the right time to talk about cryosleep, so I'll talk about that in a future episode, but I just wanted to mention that it's a favorite mechanic of mine. The second plot point in the episode is the Ghost of Christmas Present section, where Kazran is implored by the crew members of the space liner to save them, and by his inaction, they are doomed. But Kazran dismisses them because he can't find a place in his heart to do anything for them, which leads us to the third and final ghost, the Ghost of Christmas Future, where the Doctor leads a younger Kazran to see his future self. This is an interesting interaction because the change happens on both fronts. On a younger Kazran, he realizes what a cruel and vile man he has become. And on the older Kazran, he realizes that he's turned into his father, the man he swore not to become. This is enough to sway him into helping the space liner land safely, and Kazran spends a last Christmas with Abigail. Everyone lives happily ever after. The use of the time travel in this episode, as well as in the classic Christmas Carol tale, seems to be a device for forced introspection than real time travel. Essentially, Kazran is reminded of his past so he can remember the things that made him happy, and is shown the direct consequences of his actions in the future by not changing his ways. This is something that someone can do technically without time travel, but the story is enhanced by the use of it, and it makes it so there's an actual story to tell in the Doctor Who universe. Thank you for tuning in. Normally, these Christmas episodes don't have a lot of interesting things to talk about. They're normally light on the interesting time travel topics, and they're more about an interesting monster story that Doctor Who is so good at telling. But I found this one to be worth talking about, and I'm glad that I took the time to analyze it. Next time we will be starting with Season 6 on The Impossible Astronaut, the first episode of Season 6. As always, thank you for listening.